Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this Performance Analytics Academy. Today, we're going to talk about debugging. As you all know, I want to welcome you. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are in the globe. And very warm welcome to you as we today will go and talk about debugging your instance. Before we start, though, I quickly want to briefly talk about why we have this session. And as you saw in the preceding video, this session is for you. It's all about sharing ideas, getting a better understanding, asking questions, having the ability to ask questions, interact with us as on the product management team. Do please note that this session is being recorded. So if you or your company is not comfortable with that, please drop off and feel free to check back in on our YouTube channel to look back the recording. You'll miss out a great opportunity to ask questions, and we extend a very heartwarming welcome to you to ask those questions through the Q&A panel or the general chat. Q&A is a little bit easier for us so that we can sort those questions and make sure that they all get answered. My name is David Van Heusen, and I work on the outbound product management team for Platform and Now Intelligence. With me today is Adam Stout, and he's going to talk about debugging in performance analytics and reporting, some of the tougher tasks that some of our admins get tasked with on ServiceNow. So Adam, over to you.
Great, thanks, David. And so we're going to go through today and do a lot of live demos on debugging, and a lot of this session comes from questions that we've had in these academy sessions, things we've seen in the community and talking to customers. And we're going to just go through a bunch of scenarios where something's not working right, and we're going to try to fix it. We're going to look at, I'm going to walk through what I would look at if I see this problem. And then we'll have some tips about debugging certain kind of common issues that come up or where I would look. So as we get into it, again, we'll be switching back and forth quite a bit between live demos and then a couple screenshots to make sure we see what's coming through. So first of all, we're going to get started with dashboards. And this is probably the most common issue we see, especially getting started. And as we go through, I know a lot of people who are listening to this, a lot of people on the call now have seen some of these things, but we're just going to go through a wide range. So some things are easier, some things are harder, but I wanted to make sure that we had a nice session that goes through lots of things that you want to look at. So as we start with dashboards, this is the most common error that I see. Sorry, the dashboard has not been shared with you. So we have that. We're going to fix that. We're going to figure out what do we need to do for it. Again, really simple, but really common. So we want to make sure we understand that. And then what happens is we fix this, we fix the dashboard sharing, but then I have a report, or then I have a dashboard that I can't see the reports on. And then I fix the reports, which we'll go through, and then I still can't see the data. So we're going to go through and debug this situation. And step by step, what are the things we're going to look at, and how do we get through this? So I'm going to switch over to my other screen, and we're going to go to our dashboard. So I'm going to go over to my dashboard access test, and we're going to see that everything looks great. This is what we're trying to get to. So I have two reports, a pie chart and a list view. And so now I'm going to come in and I'm going to impersonate somebody who doesn't have access today. So I'm going to impersonate Alexandra. And so now I'm in as Alexandra, and we're going to not have access to my dashboard. So I'm going to pretend that I have a link to this, because normally I wouldn't even be able to find it. That would be the first step. But where we get this most common is I sent a link to Alexandra. So I'm going to click on that link. And on that link, I get what I can't see. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to switch back. We're going to switch back to me, and I'm going to grant access to Alexandra. That's the first thing that we're going to do, right? Is just check the dashboard access, since it says the dashboard can't be seen. So I'm just going to go to my normal sharing panel, And sure enough, this isn't shared with anybody. So I'm going to add Alexandra Green. She can view it and we will share. And now as I switch back to Alexandra, sure enough, I can now see the dashboard and I have my errors. So what do I do now? Well, this is an issue, not with the dashboard now, but with the reports. So we need to share the reports. So I'm going to come back and I'm going to go back to me. I'm going to go back to the dashboard. This is the easiest way to get into it. Rather than finding the reports that I need to find, I'm just going to see the reports I need to find. I'm going to go into edit mode and we're going to go into each report. We're going to go into each report and share it. There is, I believe there's an article in the community that talks about how to do this in bulk. The sharing preference for this is stored in a separate table. So it's possible with a script or in a flow to do this in bulk, but I have 2 reports on here. So I'm going to go ahead and share those reports. So I'm going to go to users and add Alexandra Green and save that. And then I'm going to go back. An important note, I have to do this for each and every report separately. And what's common is that I add one report in here and don't have the right user in the right group or the right role to see this. I'm sharing this. I shared the dashboard and the reports with users. I recommend we don't do that. In this case, it works out okay because we're doing a demo, but we really want to share with groups because one of the challenges we have here is that I had to go edit two reports. And if I had 5 reports on this tab and I have 5 tabs, I have a lot of clicking to do. But if I'm sharing this with groups, all I have to do is add Alex to that group and and now we're working. She has access to everything. So again, I'm sharing with a specific person, but we want to get into the mode of using roles and groups to really lighten that burden for us. When I see a lot of reports or dashboards shared with specific users, you're going to run into this problem. It's going to happen. Somebody's going to fall off. All right, and we're going to go back to impersonate Alexandra. And so we have access to the dashboard, we have access to the reports, but we don't have access to the data. So again, these are all the different steps we have to go through and what has to happen. Often I'll hear the comment, somebody doesn't have access to a dashboard. I always ask for a screenshot because as we've seen here, no access to the report, I need to go fix the report. If it's no access to the dashboard, truly, then it's a really quick fix. And in this case, not seeing the data, it's actually ACLs that are being secured. So we're going to go back. We're going to go back to an admin user. I am going to switch over to Alexandra's record. These reports are an incident, so I know ITIL will grant that. And again, I am just going to grant access to I'm going to grant a specific role to this user. This is not a great best practice. I want to make sure the roles are associated to groups and that Chrome doesn't restart on me. Sorry about that. Okay, so we are back. We're here. I'm bringing up the user. I'm directly assigning this role to the user, which is not a good practice. I want to make sure that my roles are assigned to groups. My roles are assigned to groups. Roles and users assigned to groups and no direct assignments. For the purposes of this test, I am just going to grant ITIL to this user. So we have a bunch of roles that come with that. And we're going to go back to impersonate Alexandra. And now what we'll see is that Alexandra has access to the dashboard, to the reports, and to the data underlying the reports. So again, if I ever hear a question about I don't have access to this dashboard, it's normally the question I get asked. I always ask for a screenshot because there's 3 very different things that I have to do to work this out. And as we see, just because I don't have access to the dashboard doesn't mean I have access to the reports or the underlying data. So you be prepared to go through these 3 different steps. Okay, and we're going to go back, recap what we're going to look at for dashboards. So we saw the 3 different things we might see. And again, I want to see that screenshot to see where the problem is. So we fix that immediately. And then when I look at dashboard access, I'm going to check those dashboard permissions. Then I'm going to check the report permissions, easy to fix. And then ACLs. And an important note about the ACLs that come through. A lot of us are used to list reports requiring access to view the records. Also be aware of the report view ACL that was introduced a few releases ago. And as things come through, we're tightening some security. In the past, you didn't need an ACL to view reports, to view those chart reports. The report view ACL allows you to control to actually block access to all reports. And that might be needed for your HR data, for your SecOps data. So be aware, it's not just read ACL anymore, but report view might be needed as well for the standard reports. Read is needed for lists, and report view is needed for all the other report types. A question came in: is there an issue with sharing with both individual users and a role, or individuals, users, and groups? No, you have all three options. I recommend you don't share with individual users. If I'm sharing a dashboard that's only meant to go to one person, that's fine. But particularly anything that's kind of production level, that I'm expecting a wide number of users, I don't want to have more than 3 or 4, maybe 5 users. At some point, you're going to go create a group. Go have a group created, because the maintenance, if this was just a group and that group had the ACLs, all I have to do is make sure that the Alexandra was in that group and everything works. If you start doing user at a time, it can go sideways really quickly, and it's incredibly hard to maintain when you have tens of thousands of users and thousands of reports and hundreds or thousands of dashboards. There's just too many moving pieces as things come through. But if I do everything through groups, life becomes much easier for me. So you want to get into the habit of using groups, and users go to groups, roles go to groups, and then everything works really smoothly when you're sharing. And I use the ITIL role in this. ITIL is not required for creating dashboards or creating reports. The report user role is what's needed to create a report. And I believe any user can create a dashboard and share a dashboard. ITIL, the reason I had to use ITIL here was because the report data, the only reason we used ITIL was to get to the data on incident, I needed ITIL. So that was very specific to this example with a report on incident. If you need the right data access levels outside of that, whatever the right role is to view those list reports. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the next level in my dashboards, and it's interactive filters. So again, a lot of questions I come up where my interactive filter doesn't work. And I think I have a quick video that will show, make sure we know what we're talking about. I have a report over on the left. I select my interactive filter and it doesn't change, right? That's the problem we see. It just doesn't change. So let's go through and figure out why that is. And there's a couple things that we're going to focus in on. So in here, I have a very similar dashboard that tests interactive filters. And on my interactive filters, this is exactly where we left off. So I want to filter my active incidents report by analysts. Nope, not working. Software, not working. Number one cause for this, by far, the number one cause is that I added this report and I didn't set it to follow interactive filters. So every report widget, you need to edit the widget and say, act as interactive filter. Follow interactive filter. Follow interactive filter. Act is where this actually will act as an interactive filter as well. But I'm going to follow the interactive filter. This is optional. I almost always check show when following the filter so I don't go crazy. So I recommend that we check both of these because that's going to help you understand, is it working or not? But we are looking at following interactive filter right here. So we're going to follow, make sure that's checked, and show. This needs to be done for every report widget on here. And now that this is set, I'm going to filter my A1 team and I see that it's filtering. Great, right? We see it refreshing. Hopefully that's coming through in the Zoom. And I select software. What? It's not right. This is the next issue that we run into. Now I see that the report is listening. It's trying to filter it, but it's not working. That's not the right result. They're not all software and Acme support. So what I need to look at next time, what I do when this happens, and this is particularly important when I have multiple filters coming in, is I'm going to add the debug widget. this is built in to help you debug interactive filters. I'm going to go to interactive filters. At the very bottom, I'm going to see debug. I'm going to click on debug. Debug homepage filters. It's actually for dashboards. And I'm going to click add. And now what I see in here is a JSON package that tells me what all of the combined filters are doing. So in this case, we're seeing that assignment group with this SysID, that's the SysID for Acme support, is being filtered to change request. And if I click on, we're going to go to support. Oh, actually, I want to, sorry, software. And when I click on software, I see that the assignment group, the SysID changed. I'm filtering change request. So my problem right now is that this is incidents and this is filtering on change requests. So my problem is this filter. I'm missing a mapping. So I'm going to go ahead and fix this by going to look at the mappings, or at least I'm going to go, this is highly suspected. This is the issue. I'm in the wrong scope. I'm going to see if I can just edit this. I don't think I can. Right, I'm going to change scopes to go to the right scope. And I'm going to add a new mapping. This is only set up right now to report on to map assignment groups to change request. I'm going to refresh this and make sure that I can edit that. We need to add a new mapping. Right. So I'm going to click on new. We're going to map it to the table that we actually want it to go to, which is going to be incident. And we're going to go to assignment group on incident, submit. We're good. And we'll go back to our dashboard and make sure that's working. Oops. We'll go back to the right dashboard. And now this is what was preloaded before with change request. So now we're going to do Acme team. And what we see here is incident has the assignment, has the filter too. There's none for refrigerator support. We're going to go to software. And now this is filtering. So the debug filter is really important, particularly if you're doing any custom filters. You need to have it up. But then also it's important because we might see some collisions that come through. So as an example, if actually I'm on the wrong scope again, the right scope. If I had two conflicting interactive filters, I might see that here. And that really might be a case if I applied my filter to the, if I had a different filter that applied to task, which incident extends task. So it would be have two conflicting pieces of information, which might end up with nothing. So really important that you have the debug filter to see what is actually being filtered here. And that's often going to tell you what's going wrong. And then the other important note about this is this filter isn't just for me. It's on this dashboard. It is a widget on the dashboard. So once I'm done with it, I'm going to come in and remove it. So if I'm debugging, we'll go back. When I'm debugging my interactive filters, it's important that we add the debug widget, but don't leave it too long. And we're going to check, is the report following? Because most often it's that I added a new widget. I replaced one report with another report and I swapped out the widgets. I didn't change it to follow, which again is why I check that show that it's following. So I know that that's been following. That's the most common thing I see. Second is that the mapping's missing. You can go drill into your mappings, but I find that adding the debugging interactive filter allows me to pinpoint where really what the problem is, right? I want to make sure that I know what tables I'm trying to report on and what the mapping is coming for. And again, one of the things that we'll see is that an interactive filter is set to apply to all, to everything in the hierarchy. That can sometimes cause an issue because it's going forward and backwards, and the mappings do already inherit extension properties. So just make sure you see the tables that are there, everything makes sense. And it might be that the particular interactive filter you have, if you're reusing that, won't work with the certain combination of reports because of inheritance. So you might have to create a new interactive filter. The only way you're really going to see that is by seeing that debug filter show you what it's trying to do, and then you understanding if that will work or not. Okay, and a question came up, and I'll still show this at the end if we can, about making a breakdown source work as a dashboard. That actually works in the same thing. That will apply as well. So we're going to go through this, and we'll come back if you don't mind asking in the Q&A. We'll make sure if we have time, we'll go through and talk about how do you set the dashboard breakdown as a filter. Okay, so we are going to go through. Next area we're going to look at is data collection jobs, and so everybody who's worked at PA at some point or another has seen collected with errors. Let's make that not scary. So we're going to go find a job that is collected with errors and see what's wrong with it, and see how to understand what can we do to look at it. So I have a job with issues. So if I look at my job logs, I am collected with errors. This one has actually gotten a lot easier to look at nowadays as we go through. I'm going to go ahead and look at my last job run. I'm going to look at the job logs. And the job logs give us a lot of information about what was happening. So how long did it take to run? It ran immediately and died. That's a sign that something's pretty seriously wrong. I have all the configuration options up here that I can look through. Before I do that, I'm actually just going to look at the logs. So when I look at the logs in sequence, the first thing, it just tells me that I tried to execute this as a user that's not active. Very clear and concise logs that tell us what's going on. These were improved in Orlando. If you were using performance analytics before Orlando, sometimes not everything was clear. It would just say there was an error. A lot of work was put into place in Orlando to make the job logs much more verbose. So you will see there are a lot more entries, but particularly that is useful when there is an issue, because this is exactly the issue we're having. So we're going to go back to the job, and I have my run as Gavin. Now I want to make a note, because this is really common that we have jobs running as us. I see that a lot of people do that. Always bad, always a bad idea. The run as doesn't impact any ACLs. Performance analytics bypasses the ACLs to select the data to get the accurate counts. So you don't need to run this as admin. You don't have to run this as you. What we recommend is that you create a performance analytics user and run that. And I'm not sure if I have one on this instance. Well, I don't have a dedicated one. I should create one. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and use this user, because at least I know that it's a PA user. And I'm going to save that. And now if I execute the job, so now we've collected everything is green. And if I go into what's being set up, we see all those logs about what's going on and what it's processing and how far it's going. Lots of great information here that comes through. If there's no problems, I don't look at it. But when there is a problem, you're going to have a lot more information here to figure out what's going on. And again, to close out the user issue, don't run it as you. Make sure you have a dedicated user. That's going to make some other debugging a lot easier. And we'll see that a little bit later on, because the logs will be written as that user. So if that user is you, it's really hard to tell the system log entry from you interactive session and you job. But now if I'm running this as a dedicated performance analytics user, I can filter logs created for the performance analytics user. And I can tell the difference between me interactive and that dedicated job. So let's go back and recap. So we fixed our job not collecting. Again, the debug situation here is pretty easy. Go look at the logs and look at what it says. In Orlando, a lot of information was added. This is a summary that's in the documentation and in the release notes as well. But you're going to see a lot of information in here, and we'll see a little bit more that talk about this indicator was inactive. The condition, what were the conditions that the indicator was running? So if you're missing data, you're not getting the right counts, the first thing you want to do is go look at the job logs for the last run and look for any warnings, but also just you want to read the logs and look for anything that it might just be information that we didn't collect this indicator because it's turned off. really useful, really quick to find what those problems are. And then the next thing that I want to look at is when I am looking at the data collector, we just looked at the PA job logs and we were able to answer our question. If that doesn't and everything looks good there, the next step I'm going to look at is looking at syslog. And with syslog, we will look at syslog in just a moment. With syslog, we'll say this again, and I'll say it now, syslog's really big. Don't just type in syslog.list, but use system logs and then click on all or errors so that it's only filtered to today. If you type in syslog, you might get just millions and millions of entries, and it might take a while. So make sure you always have a filter on syslog. The default one, if we go to system logs, all is today, which is generally very, very quick. Since we talked about the users, a couple of questions that came in. What's the recommended roles of the dedicated PA user for the run as? And the recommended role is none. That user should not need any roles. The exception is scripts. The reason we need to set the user is the scripts are going to run as that user. So it's important if you have a script that is doing some work or querying some data, which is bad, and we'll get to that, but the script needs to be able to execute as that user. What that means in practice is that generally that user has no roles, maybe SMC internal, but they shouldn't need any elevated roles. They don't need any roles to access the data for PA. And then the question came in about, again, related to it. Should I have one dedicated performance analytics user or one per job? Either way is okay. I generally go with one, or I will do one per subject area. Creating one per job, if I have 40 jobs, is a bit lot to manage. So I'm just going to set one for HR, one for SecOps, one for ITSM. I think that gives me enough logging granularity that if I go into the logs, I'll know which area it's trying to do, which script it's trying to run that has the error, whatever the case may be. But I'd start with one, and if you want to, you can separate it out. I don't think you need to go one per. It is fine to go one per. And if you are creating this user, you're going to mark them as a one of the sys user record options is it's our internal integration user, I believe, something to that effect. You're going to mark it as that to say we don't log in with this user, and then just set to the password that nobody needs to know. Just type in garbage on the keyboard, because nobody's ever going to log in as this user. It has no roles, even if they did log in. But that, again, will allow us some more granularity or some more visibility into the logs if we go into syslog. Okay, so now we're going to go on to debugging some indicator issues that come through. So let's talk about indicators. So this is a really common situation. We're going to go through a couple of situations that I'm going to hop over, and we'll just debug them all as we go through. So the first one that we get is the data is not showing for the current month. We are in June. I expect to see June data here. What's going on? So we'll go through what that use case is and how do we look for it. Next, we're going to look at no breakdown. I have data. I collected data for this, but I'm not seeing it on my widget. It's saying no data, but there should be data. So what's going on here? So we're going to walk through how do I debug that. And then we're going to go through the variation of that is my second level isn't available. Why is my second level not available? If I look through it, what's going on? I have data, but not second levels when I expect second levels. So we're going to go through those three first, and then we'll come back and then do a little bit more diving into this. So we're going to go back to Chrome, and we are going to go to my indicators dashboard. So here's the situation we have where I'm expecting June. I have data from June 1st, but that's not June. As we go through on this one, this can be a really simple one if you know what you're doing, and if you don't, you don't. So the first thing we're going to do is go look at the widget, the widget indicator. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the widget and see what's going on. Sorry, and these are the same indicator that come through. And this one is actually pretty simple. It's doing what I set it to do. And this is very common with widget problems, is that there are lots of options and I don't know what they all do. And in this case, my time series is by month average, which will not include partial months. It will only include completed months, which is correct in many use cases where it's not valid until it's done. In this case, it is valid. I'm going to be okay with it. So I need to change my time series from by month average to by month average plus. The plus, again, very important, mean include partial months. That's what the month I started and the current month. So now if I go back to this dashboard, we're going to see June data. So now we're going to see the average data for June because I have now told it include partial months. The widgets, I don't think I've ever seen them show wrong information. What we see them do is that they're not showing what you expect. So again, very important that we go through the widget configuration, which does change. The options change with the different types of visualizations. Understand what they do and what they're expecting to do and where they're supposed to do it. Another one that we often get is that it's not following the breakdown. And that's, again, if we don't set it to follow, it won't follow. There's lots of configuration options because we have lots of use cases we want to handle. Make sure you know what they are, look at what's going through, what's on and what's set. Okay, the next use case we had was our missing data. So I'm going to go to my breakdown not being here. And so I have a tree map and a tree map of, in this case, it's all tasks. And my all tasks looks good. I have a breakdown. So I have 31,000 tasks that are low priority, some planning, some high. I have a few more breakdowns. We're gonna pick assignment groups that we get. Yep, so it'll go through and do my assignment groups, again, all my counts. That's fine. And now I'm gonna pick, you may guess which one is broken. I'm gonna click a breakdown by task. This is not a good idea to break down by task, and it's actually not gonna work here. And what we're gonna see, it's gonna try and create this breakdown by task and get all the zeros. And in about 30 seconds, it's going to come back saying it doesn't work. We'll get that no data. When no data, that's not right? In this use case, there is data, right? And it's just not doing what I expect to do with my task being broken. There we go. And so no data to display. Again, we'll get this. So I want to go, well, how do I know what should happen? So the first thing I want to do is go look at the job logs when this is run. So from here, I'm actually going to switch back to priority. That's going to let me get to this indicator pretty quickly. Actually, we'll go back. A couple of ways of doing this. We can go to the widget. I'm actually just going to go to the analytics hub because I can get to edit right away from there. And I'm going to go to edit indicator. And on my indicator, what I'm trying to get to is the job that ran. So this is only in one job. That's simple. If it's in multiple jobs, look for the active job. Generally, they're only going to be in one active job. So we're going to go to that job. And on that job, we have collected with warnings. So let's see what's going on. I'm going to go view that warning. And here's my problem right here. So I'm looking in sequence. So job log gives me the sequence that was actually run in, and we'll see how quick everything goes through. And what happens is this breakdown has been disabled. I'll see the same thing if I come into my breakdowns. I'm going to go to my automate. Go to a new window. I'm going to go to breakdown sources. And I'll see here that task has been, the data collector active is false. So important to note, hopefully you've never seen this. On this form, I don't see it. The data collector active is false. But if I go click on this breakdown source, I'm actually going to get a warning saying that this has been disabled because the number of elements is too many. Default for this, I believe, is 10,000. But there is a property for this. And if we go into performance analytics properties, there's a setting towards the bottom. Maximum number of breakdown elements for a breakdown to be included in data collection. It's 10,000. I believe this is out of the box default. Because we had more than 10,000, it disabled itself. I can raise this. I recommend you don't. 10,000 is a lot of elements to go through. In this case, I know I'm above that anyway. If you wanted to raise it to 12,000, okay. You want to raise it to 15,000, maybe. Don't raise it to 50,000, 100,000. You're going to end up with a lot more problems that come through. So be very careful of that on these elements. And this is the number of possible elements. This is what's key. It's the number of possible elements, not the number of actual elements. So the way what we're looking for here is just simply in my breakdown source, my breakdown source for task, I don't have any filters. So there are 37,000 options. Well, that's the number it's querying. 37,000 is greater than 10,000. That doesn't say how many I have. So this can also be an issue with users, right? Where we see this really commonly is that users, because I have a breakdown that is by user, but what I really want is by VP. And so we can handle this issue. I'm going to go through where, let's say, active is true. I just need to get this under that property level, which is 10,000. This would still break. And so we're going to break down by, let's see if we can do, this is task. So we're going to do active is true. And, we're going to do task type is incident because I have less than that number of incidents. This is still probably not a great idea. It won't scale for a lot of people, but it does get me way below the 10,000. So I'm going to have my filter, which actually says, I actually only want incidents. I only want incidents. So I don't need all tasks. Again, really common use cases, users where I only want VPs. I only want department heads. I only want people in this group where I'm going to be easily under 10,000. Then let's refine the breakdown source to be under 10,000. And then very important, I'm actually going to, I check the box to say, go ahead and reactivate it. Let's try this again. So as we go through, I'm going to go back to my, my broken job log. Yep, I'm going to go to my broken one. I'm going to execute now. And as this runs, it actually looks like it might take a little bit of time to run this. It collected. Let's go look at the warnings and see what we have. I don't know if we broke something else in here. I'm going to filter out the information and go to warnings. Well, now, so I'm okay that I'm under the number of the breakdowns, but now the problem is I'm missing the mapping. I don't have a mapping from that breakdown to task. So if I go back into my breakdowns, automated breakdowns, and I have a breakdown by task. That was broken. I do have a mapping, so I actually am not sure why that's not working now. My indicator is right. My indicator on all tasks is on task. So that should have worked. So that was not the actual debugging I wanted to go through, but I did want to focus in on the logs tell me what's going on. And that's what I need to solve. The key is all in these logs, right? It'll tell me what's going on and where it's coming through. Sometimes it's not going to give you the name. It'll give you the sys but this is the breakdown mapping for this. So I can go grab that breakdown. We're going to go to breakdowns and put in sys that. And so sorry. So state, it wasn't because I was looking at the wrong one. State wasn't mapped. So state's not going to work. I'm not going to fix that right now, but the way to fix this is to add a mapping here. And we see there's no mapping to state. So it exactly told me what to do. If I had followed the logs in the first place, rather than guessing, I would have skipped a couple of clicks. So we collected the data, and we're going to go back quickly to the indicators dashboard. And if I go to my breakdowns, priority should still come up. And now if I select broken task, this might be ugly because there's still a lot of data, but it does work. So again, the problem was my breakdown was disabled, so it wasn't collected. It's not super clear here that that's the case, but by looking at the logs, I see what's going on. And if I pick state, I'm actually still going to be missing data because of the error that we saw that we did not correct, right? I need to add a mapping to state. Okay, and then the last area that we wanted to look at for indicators that we come into is my second levels. This one's a very common one as well. This one's not going to be in the logs as far as what's going on. I need to actually look and see the configuration. So I'm going to go and jump into the analytics hub. And if I go to my analytics hub, I have all my breakdowns. So I have by assignment group. Yep, lots of stuff. Category, lots of stuff. Priority, lots of stuff. I go into my, I want to see these moderates, what groups they're in. There's no breakdowns. There's no second level breakdowns. In this case, we're going to go back to the indicator configuration and see what's going on. And so in this case, we're going to go in, and the first thing I'm going to look at for anything with second level is to correct the matrix. In this case, the matrix isn't being collected. So we're going to say that I want the second level. Again, it was doing what we said, which was don't collect the second level, but I do want it. So I say to collect my second level. I'm going to go back to the indicator, look at my jobs. Oh, I have a working job. I'll execute that. We're not going to wait 2 minutes, but we might come back to this. Now that second level will be there. It's doing, again, exactly what we said it was going to be, exactly what we wanted it to do. Okay, so those are those use cases. A couple other ones we're going to hit really quickly are formula indicators. And we're going to go through a couple quick options through these. So this is an option I got, and we're focusing on formula indicators, but there's no data to analyze. The issue is I know there is data to analyze. So what's going on? So we're going to take a look at that. Then we're going to take, once we fix that, we're going to run into this issue, which is there's no score. The score is null. So there's data, but it's null, which is a bit confusing, but two slightly different issues. And then we're going to get working. So let's go quickly over into our debug area. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the Q&A, and I will answer them as we're going. And if they're, we might answer them at the end if they're not directly related. So I'm going to go to my formula tests, and we're going to see exactly what we just saw. So I'm going to come in here. I have a pretty standard formula, number of open incidents divided by the number of failed risk indicators. This makes no sense, but again, we're just doing division in this formula. So I'm going to show my analytics hub, and we're going to get that there's no data. So why not? Well, formula indicators have an optimization to say if any of these are null, then the answer is null. If any of the indicators are null, don't even process it. Just save time. It's null. Null is null. There is an option to turn off that optimization by going into other, and what we're going to say is allow formula component to be null. So again, it's doing exactly what I want to say, but I get that common error. I'm going to allow this to be null. And so once I do that and save this, we're going to go back to the analytics hub. And now there is data, but it's null. The result is null. Why is that? And so now we're going to go on this indicator. We have the issue. We have it checked to be null is null. The problem is that this is null. And something divided by null is null. So that's why we get those empty answers. So what I'm going to put in to fix this, I'm jumping to my cheat sheet. I'm going to handle null. So what I'm going to put in my formula indicators are just simply JavaScript with this replacement, right? But JavaScript works. We can do JavaScript functions inside of this. And then what I'm saying is if there is a number of failed indicators, then go ahead and do this math. Else, do something else. So this is really interesting, really common in SLA attainment, where if I don't have any incidents, what is my SLA attainment? Is it 0 or is it 1 or is it null? You can argue the right answer is null, but in certain cases I go, no, I want to see 100% because they didn't fail anything. So that's where I would use a formula like this. But not only are we handling, we have the same indicators, but we wanted to say we handle null, allow it to be null, and then we're actually going to handle null, which then allows us to show this analytics hub. And what we're going to see is 1, because that's what we said. If it's null, make it 1. So again, the different errors we're going through, it's doing what we're saying, but I wanted to make sure that you saw, if you're seeing nulls, that you go look at that formula, you'll go look at what's going on. Okay, and to summarize what we just looked at, a couple things that come through, and there's one more thing I'm going to hop back in and make sure that you see as well, is that when we're having a problem with indicators, we're going to look at the widget configuration first. Make sure you know what those options are. We're going to look at the indicator configuration after that, and you might need to add some logging, and we'll go through that. And then I knew that data was there. If we weren't sure, go look at the score sheet. And if the score sheet's not right, you can look at the PA scores tables, the L1 and L2s. A very, very important note, and I'm going to bring this up, is that you want to make sure that you add the sysparam filter only equals true. There can be hundreds of millions or billions of records in this table. You don't want to wait for that to load. Sysparam filter only equals true will only load the filter. So I'm going to jump over and do these last two pieces that we didn't do before, so that you see them. Well, we didn't need that. Again, if I didn't know, let's go in here. I'm going to go back into my formula. I knew that this was null. I cheated, but let's say I didn't. Let's say is number of open incidents null. So I have the contributing indicators. This came in Quebec. I have this list that has all the contributing indicators and the indicator sources for them. I'm going to go to that indicator. And on that indicator, I'm going to show scores for this indicator. And it's going to show me the score sheet. In the score sheet, yep, there's scores. I see scores. Very important note here is if there is no score in the top level, there is no score. There's, again, an optimization to say if there's no total, there can't be subtotals. If there's no grand total, if it's null, then they're all null. So make sure there's a value there. That's only a manual. By default, the data collector is always going to put that in there. But I do see their scores. But there are some limits to score sheets, and particularly the score sheet has a limit of only showing 1,000 elements. So my groups are less than 1,000. But if I had more than 1,000, it wouldn't be here. So if for some reason the score sheet's not showing me what I want to see, and again, it's going to the vast majority of the time, but if I don't trust this for some reason, then I will go look at the scores table. And this is what's really important. So I'm going to go to PA scores L1, which is the main scores table. I'm going to type it in up here. And the reason I'm going to do that is I want to add a parameter to the top, which is sysparm. This is in the presentation. Filter only equals true. Really important for these large tables. What it does is it doesn't load the table. It's just showing me the filters. So now I can do indicator is number of open incidents. Make sure that you're always querying with the indicator. That's a lot of data, but it's not millions or billions. The more filters you can put in, the better, particularly for things like start at, to add that in here as well, right? You don't want this to be too big. It'll just overwhelm your system. So that sysparm filter only is true. Really important if you're ever looking at this table. I recommend you don't. This is the last resort. If I go back to the notes on this, that's the last resort. Score sheet is generally going to give you what you want. So we'll score sheet, make sure there's scores, and that it's not an analytics hub problem, that it's not a widget problem. And then only if, again, the one place I really see this is elements. I have more than 1,000 elements that come through. Okay, and then we have one last area we're going to talk about quickly. And again, go ahead and throw those questions in as we come through. So the next area we're going to talk about is PA scripts, and another issue we want to debug. First thing that comes through is testing your scripts. So I have a test wrapper that I use when I'm testing. It's not perfect because there's a couple of minor differences in variables between the actual environment PA scores are being run on and what's being run in this environment. But I use background scripts to test my scripts. So what I'm seeing here is I'm querying data. So I'm getting 10 active incidents. I'm going to try and mirror my indicator source as much as possible. At the very top, I'm going to fake score start and score end to be date time. So I'm setting those to be today and then ending tonight. So what I do is add a day and subtract a second, gives me the last second of tonight. And then I'm going to create a variable called current. Really important, it's current. That's emulating what is passed to the script. And then I loop through it. So all the first half of this is just get me some data and loop through it. and then I have my area that I want to run this on. So I am going to try and copy my script. And we'll go back to our environment here. And what I'm sharing here, we're going to go to background scripts. Paste that in, which is not pretty, but hopefully works. I have some comments in here, so this actually won't work yet. There we go. And I'm going to run my script. And so what I get back from this is a nice script. It's saying for this incident, I have a score start and score end of this date. This is the field I'm passing to make sure that's coming through, and then what the value is. So this script looks good. I'm getting data back, and I think it makes sense. I can put some more debug in here as well. But I'm going to do this basically if I have any issues. And what I'm putting in is the PA script goes right into here, right into this section. And then I have another script that I'm going to have, and I'm going to paste that in. So we have this. So I have this script that I'm parsing in, I'm doing things going through, and we're gonna run this. So I'm going to paste that right into my start and end PA script section. We're going to make sure, filter out my comments. Looks good. Okay, and I'm going to run that. Well, first thing that happens when I run it as a background script is I see there's a syntax error. So we'll come in and we'll fix my syntax error. Then we're going to hit run. Missing.
Adam, it's in the far current line. You're missing a semi at the end, an end. Oh, there you go. Oh no, there it is. Sorry. It mentioned the missing semi column.
On line 20, it doesn't like that. Before statement, while current, evaluating. Oh, I pasted too much. Sorry. Okay, well, I'm gonna put my cheat sheet back in here anyway, because there is one that I want to pull in here as we talk about debugging. I'm actually going back to my old one. So my script here works, things are good. Here's an important note. So I'm going to take my script, which is what's between my PA script start, just copy that out. Go to my PA scripts, go to scripts. I have my bad script. So it actually has my bad script in it already without the syntax error. So this one's good. We're going to look down here at the indicators that this runs on. We're going to go to the open incidents. We're going to look at the assessment. That's useful for debugging too, but we're going to go to the job, and on the job, we're going to run the job. And this is super quick. So we're going to run the job. Again, something went wrong. We're going to look for errors. So I'm going to go look in that job log. And what do we have here? I wanted to bring this up, really important, a super common thing we see in scripts. Not all references of current are passed in the arguments. If anybody in the chat knows what this is caused from, Let's see if this comes through. But the short answer is in my script, we'll come over here. We're going to go back just to the script. Again, this is probably the most common thing that we see getting started is in my script, I have a comment. Current dot, it's kind of not very smart about this. It thinks this is a variable, and I am not passing syscreated on in here. I could pass syscreated on, this is created. If I pass this in here, that actually will fix it, but it's kind of useless as well. So all I'm going to do is you can remove that comment, or I'm going to put something in, but I just cannot have current dot even in a comment. So I'm going to fix that. We're going to come back and run this job again. And now we'll see that it runs correctly. Nope, got an error. Let's go take a look at our error. So then what it says in here is that I have, I'm sending null. That I have a null that's coming through. It doesn't like something that's going on. And I don't think we're going to have time to go through this, but what we're looking for, if I go back to my script, let's say I copy this script now. Let us duplicate here. I'm going back to my background and make sure it runs here. And it does run here. This is one of the issues that we can run into, the differences between background scripts. And so we need to iterate. So it does work here. Well, the issue that we have is that score end and score start, it doesn't like. There is an issue with what's going on here. That's actually not causing it. I have a date time conversion issue is what we're seeing. So we need to look at the date times and make sure that we're converting them the right way, that this works in here. In this case, it's a glide element to glide date time issue that I have to work through. But the way that I work through it, the way that I debug it, is by having my script open. Again, make sure it works as a background script, which is first phase. So there's not syntactically something wrong. Then we put it in the script and make sure that we run it. Again, scripts we always want to do in a subprod. And as I come through in my job, I do want to make sure that it's just not that error. You're going to fix it. Yep. And then figure out what's going on, what's going wrong here. I have to look at it to see what it is. It might be here. Syntax error. But that's the error I'm going to work through, right? Looking at those logs, it's going to tell me what's going on. If I go to system logs, I'll see some more information. I'll see that specifically. So again, this one's running as me, so that's not any help. I'm actually going to rerun this as performance analytics security user. Execute that, and we're going to go to system logs. And on my system logs, created by, this is why I don't run it as me, because then I wouldn't be able to tell what was going on. So I'm going to filter to that user. I can look at the errors, and then I'm going to try and figure out what's going on here, where it doesn't like it. All the information is being passed as far as what the data is that's being passed to it. And I have that script error. So by using the job logs, generally I'm going to get what I want now. Pre-Orlando wasn't always the case. But again, I have the access to the job logs. I have the system logs. I can filter to my user. And that's giving me the information I need to work through where the problem is. And to wrap up what we have for scripts, I know we're just a little bit over. First of all, try to avoid scripts. Take a look at the Academy session on descripting performance analytics. We want to avoid them wherever we can. Time series, the ones we looked at, we actually might need. That's the primary use case for scripts in PA. But first of all, for scripts, try to avoid them. Then make sure you test them. If you are going to use them, make sure you test them in background scripts and that they work there and they give you the right answer. Then if you have an issue, check the job logs. We saw the error there. The system log actually didn't give us any additional information, which is great. And then if all else fails, then you're going to add some GS info logs, and that will send more information to the system log, not to the job log, but to the system log, And so we'll use our normal scripting debugging, a GSinfo or GSwarm. So we can go line by line. What type is this? Is it the data I expect it to be? You're going to use those debug statements again to see what's going on. And now here's a list of useful links in here of stuff we talked about: sharing a responsive dashboard, sharing a report, the report view access control, that new ACL, important to be aware of, because that can cause you some issues that if you've been around for a while, you may not be used to. Take a look at the debug filter, the data collection process and logging. Great documentation article on how the data collector works and all the logging and what every line of that logging means. It's an amazing article in the docs. Time series aggregations, we talked about plus and not plus, formula indicators, that null option and everything that happens in there. Some examples of using the formula API, where you can go through there. In the developer portal, there's information about the Glide system API, and then server-side scripting. Where we ended was talking about Glide GSinfo. Debugging a PA script is debugging server-side scripts. There's a walkthrough and a learning path on how to get some hands-on experience debugging server-side scripting, which is debugging PA scripts. And then there's a great training on formula indicators in Now Learning. And as I talked about before, don't use scripts. And we talked about that in a previous Performance Analytics Academy. If you haven't looked at that, you may want to go back and look at that, because the easiest way to debug a script is not have a script. And with that, I know we're over time. We can stay on for a few more minutes. If you have any questions, go ahead and drop them into the Q&A. There is one that's in here. And it has to do with creating a conditional script, which we didn't talk about, but for reports and for PA, for data collectors, all scripts can have a condition on whether they run or not. And the script is returning false, so it doesn't run. They want it to run only Monday through Friday and not Saturday and Sunday. And as we upgrade to Quebec, it's now showing an error on Saturday and Sunday instead of not. That I think is as designed. I know we generally don't recommend having conditions on PA scripts. We are collecting data all the time and we're looking for weekends. If you're going to do that, so the question is, how do I get a PA job to only run on specific days? The specific days of the week, the specific days you can set it to, but specific days of the weeks and excluding weekends. Our general recommendation is you do run it on the weekends. Just understand that there's zeros. What I do in the past is by automated indicator, I collect the zeros, I collect the low numbers, and then I might use a formula indicator. A formula indicator, it's just JavaScript, so I can evaluate score start, day of the week there, and just null out the data I don't want. It's not a perfect solution, but I can collect the data, no errors, and I have those Sundays if I ever want to go back, which might be important on the month end. But I collect all the data in my automated indicator, and I layer on top of that a formula indicator, which will then hide specific days. The alternative to that, that's the option I would probably go with, is actually show them. If I weren't going to show them, I would use a formula to hide the days I want, but I still have that data if I change my mind. The third option is to use Flow Designer. There's a lab from CreatorCon, which I think is in Now Learning now. If not, for some reason, I'm thinking that all the labs get exposed in Now Learning on the 3rd, so tomorrow. It's actually my lab from CreatorCon about using Flow Designer. And one of the things we talk about in Flow Designer is firing a job. So I could actually have a flow that just fires on those days. That's not an error in the condition, that the flow itself analyzes it and fails, or exits, not fails, but exits out early. Otherwise, it will fire the PA job. So I would set the PA job to on demand and use a flow to execute it whenever the right conditions appear. Okay, we ran out of questions. So I'm happy to, if you have any others, we can put them in there. And if not, I was going to hand it back over to David to wrap up. Still there?
Yes, we can do that. We'll do a quick wrap up since running a little bit over. Okay. Just making sure that I select the right share screen. So thank you very much. Thanks, Adam, for the in-depth on debugging. I'm sure we could do another session on that. Actually, I learned something new in a course I took recently, which was you could also use the table name and then apply dot filter, and then it would also launch the same table, but only with the filter condition, similar to what you showed earlier.
That is great to know. Thank you.
Yes, I also didn't know that. 7+ years, who knows? Still learning. So all these sessions and the past sessions have been recorded and are available through YouTube, as you may know very well. So please take your time to go through them, watch them whenever you have a convenient moment. They contain a wealth of information and can really get you moving forward and make sure that you make the best out of the performance analytics and reporting features and functionalities. Also, the community itself, where we have a very dedicated forum, Analytics, Intelligence, and Reporting, where you can quickly get up and running with things around performance analytics and reporting. Or if you're a little bit more advanced, you can take it to the next level. So these cards hold all the links and information that you need to either get started or take your implementation to the next level. Don't forget, there's lots of training and labs. Adam just recently mentioned it. Tomorrow, we should be launching most or all of the Knowledge 21 labs in Now Learning, and they will be free for everyone with a ServiceNow account to basically enroll in. You will get yourself an instance where that's applicable for the labs, and then you can go through that lab and teach yourself a lot around performance analytics and the reporting, but everything, virtual agent, the platform. We have lots of great content there. And other sessions that you also might be interested in, we have a mobile app academy. And that's, I believe, bi-weekly or monthly. And the Virtual Agent Academy is usually bi-weekly as well. It was this last Tuesday. So if you missed that, both also have a YouTube channel with recordings. So don't forget to check those out as well. And again, heartfelt will thank you for everyone in participating or sponsoring Knowledge 21. And please join us next year in 2022. And who knows, that might be as we can actually in a physical event. All right, don't forget another great post. If you want to contribute to the community, there are some tips out there with this article. And remember, use the community for those questions. Catch up on the topics through the YouTube channel. Submit your ideas and vote up any ideas existing in the idea portal. And don't forget to take some training. With that said, thank you very much. And I hope that you enjoy the remainder of your day. See you next time.